Good morning. Well, just exploring a new part of the map. Today, I'm up in the hills of Pacifica, which is just south of San Francisco. And over here we have the moon setting. Over here we have the sun rising. And just going to try something a little different and do one of these walking videos. I've got to say, some of my favorite YouTubers, including Peter Zeihan and Lander, they just get out on a walk, hit record, and off you go. So let's give this a try. The wonderful thing about being raised in Britain and spending time in Silicon Valley, which is in California, America, to really see a lot of the contrasts that exist in the different cultures and their respective benefits and drawbacks. One of the beautiful things about British culture is this kind of obsession with craft and taste and the design education and the creative arts and the investment that goes into that. And one of the most amazing things about Californian culture is this belief that you can do things. It's this certainty that new things can be created, that new energy can be directed, new businesses can be built, new ideas can take root and spread. And right now in Britain, we're almost at 20 years of no growth, or at least since my adult life, 17, and I'm now 37. There's been no meaningful growth on a per person basis. So it means the UK for 2 decades has gone sideways. By way of contrast, in America, and in particular in California, and even more particularly in the Silicon Valley, wider Bay Area, the growth has been extraordinary. And on a per person basis, everybody's income has gone up. And naturally, if you spend your life in an environment of no growth, where costs are rising, wages are flat, or flat relative to inflation, it just makes you crane your neck downwards. You start looking at the earth instead of looking at the sky. You start thinking things will always be this way when they don't have to be. And nothing kind of sums this up better than the arrival of Waymo in London. So Waymo, I'm sure most people know, is an autonomous car service. It's like Uber, but without a driver. You book a car and it's driven by a robot and it arrives. And they have been operating in Silicon Valley for a few years and open to the public, I think like over a year or so ago. And they have been deploying in lots of cities across America, but their first international deployment is in London. And to my knowledge, this is going to be the largest public deployment of robotics that anybody can access in London. And to me, this is exciting because you're getting to see what happens in Silicon Valley coming to London in a much more meaningful way than just the phone I hold in my hand or the laptops most people use. So I think there's something way more visceral about robotics than computers and phones. Like, everybody has a phone, everybody uses some form of computer at some point for their work or life, and they're about to experience what fully autonomous systems are going to unlock in their lives. Just look at the way the light is coming in here. Oh wow, fantastic. Absolutely beautiful. Magic. And over here, you have Pacifica, and the light and the shadow, stunning. But in this way, much of the artificial intelligence groundwork was laid by people who are Brits or were trained in Britain, by British universities, by British culture, and by London. One of the most obvious examples is DeepMind, which is a London-based company that was funded by Americans, acquired by Americans, grown by Americans, deeply financed by Americans, and ultimately kind of controlled by Americans. And Demis Habbousis is an incredible CEO and leader of that organization, and can be credited with ushering in much of what modern AI is now today. But in order for him to grow and succeed, he had to seek Californian funding and Californian energy. And this is the theme really that I'm kind of toying with as I walk, is what is the combination of British taste and Californian entrepreneurial energy producing? Well, you've got the likes of Mike Moritz, who's an investor over here, Charlie Songhurst, who's an angel investor. You have amazing British founders and creators, obviously Johnny Ive, the designer of Apple. His team included Chris Stringer, who was crucial to the first iPhone design, and he is British as well. And all of them have had extraordinary careers in California, but were trained and developed and honed as people in the United Kingdom, in Britain, and in particular in London. The thing that is really clear to me, having spent kind of half my life fully in Britain and half my life in America and around the world, is that the talent exists in Britain. The talent is there, but the system is simply not conducive to high-scale creative work. And I think that the system in California has a few elements. So the first one is at-will employment, or this ability for both companies and people to be free from one another without restraint. So the way this looks is, if you leave a company, you can join another one the next day, and there's nothing they can do to stop you. There is no concept of gardening leave or deeply restrictive payouts that stop you joining another company, or anything that can stop you moving your talent from one company to another. And this is not true in the UK, where there's all kinds of employment regulation and laws, and designed ostensibly, or the intention behind it is to make it safer for the employees. But the result is it is worse for both employees and employers. So in California, the highest quality talent can increase their wages by switching jobs whenever they want. And the lowest quality talent is fired immediately without any form of extended performance measurement. And so it creates this system that sucks the best talent up to the highest wages, highest responsibility, and the most amount of input into the company. And it removes and filters out the worst talent who then can't afford to live in California and they have to leave. And this is an intense system, but it works. Like, people who try their hand at startup life and corporate life in Silicon Valley and the big technology companies, they quickly find out if they're good or not, and they quickly find out if their team love them, and they quickly find out whether they should stay or whether they should go. And it is a intense but very thorough vetting process on talented people. And so that's one thing that the UK could shift on that would make an enormous difference, is to introduce at-will employment. And so the most talented Brits could increase their wages quickly, and the least talented people could be removed from companies as quickly as possible, so that they don't damage the culture, bring down their fellow teammates, and ruin the vibe. So that's the first thing California got right. The second thing is the popularity of stock-based compensation. Now, stock-based compensation is where, alongside your salary, which is denominated in dollars, you also receive shares. And in California, and in particular in Silicon Valley, this is now the norm, where you may receive a base salary of several $100,000, but on top of that, you'll be getting hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars worth of stock in the company you're working in. Now, this is increasing in popularity in London. There are a bunch of startups who've taken the Silicon Valley model, or they are technically incorporated in Delaware, and they have an office in London, and they are issuing stock to their employees. So some of the great examples of this are TransferWise, 11 Labs, and Revolut. And those three companies are relatively new. They're based in London, and they remunerate their employees both with cash and stock. And I think that if we could change London so that there was, or change the way HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, treat stock-based compensation, so that it's as easy as earning pounds to receive stock, and it is incredibly simple for people to understand the value of their stock and for them to sell it on secondary markets. I think we could completely change the startup ecosystem over there by even improving upon the system that exists in Silicon Valley. Right now, there are some constraints to the system here, where you can receive stock, it can go up in value, and you're forced to pay taxes on something that has increased in value but for which you have no cash yet. So if London introduced stock-based compensation that's only taxed when you receive cash gains, it would just be life-changing for startup employees. The ability to earn stock and only pay taxes on it when you actually receive cash for that stock would give people such peace of mind that they would feel comfortable putting more of their eggs into the basket of their startup, digging deeper and owning more of the company, because they would know that they won't be on the hook for paying taxable gains, or paying tax on gains that are not yet liquid. By that I mean having to come up with cash to pay for the increase in the value of stock, even though you haven't actually received any cash from the increase in value of that stock. So that's the second way that Britain could start to improve the startup ecosystem. Number one, at-will employment, and number two, stock-based compensation with simple taxation. And the third thing that I think I would focus on is being more bold around reallocating capital from retirement funds into higher risk assets. So in the early 90s, retirement funds had lots of their holdings in British stocks and technology companies and the FTSE 500. And now, because of a bunch of changes in the safety and management of retirement money, a lot of them are just subsidizing British government borrowing. And so we have trillions and trillions of pounds locked up in the lowest yielding debt from the government, instead of invested in the FTSE 500 or high growth companies that are based in Britain, and venture capital firms that are willing to invest in British companies. So I think if there was an incentive created for retirement funds to say allocate, take 10% of their capital to venture capital, and they would got some kind of tax break on that to offset the risk, then you would see this flood of money into British venture capital firms funding British companies that could deliver British initial public offerings or acquisitions that would return money to British retirement funds. And so you kick off that virtuous cycle, and this is very common in America. You have Michigan State University and the California pension system, and Stanford University, and a whole bunch of educational and charitable organizations who are investing in venture capital firms based in Silicon Valley. And those are the ones who are reaping the gains from all of the AI growth. So although AI is usually a kind of private market game, what's exciting is that some of the funds that have invested in AI actually represent pension funds based in America. And those pensioners are going to be indirectly receiving money in the future from all of this fantastic growth in the artificial intelligence boom that's going on right now. So that's the three things. It's the employment law, it's the compensation law, and it is the investment incentives. And those are the flywheels that are very, very potent out here in California, extremely strong. And those are the ones that everybody here benefits from. So the ability for talent to flow wherever it wants, the ability for talent to own a piece of the company they work on, and for companies to attract investment from venture funds who have large tracts of capital from retirement funds. And so it creates this incredible flywheel of capital trickling in from the retirement funds, people receiving stock in the companies they work at, and being able to switch company and earn more stock if they feel like the company they're working at is not as good as another opportunity where they could be at. So it's an incredible kind of talent fusion reactor, which is mixing the very smartest people with the highest quality capital with the biggest technological outcomes. And the way that this ends up flowing is now, it used to be that all of these companies would go public. So they would file with a stock exchange, they would register with the Securities and Exchange Commission in America, and then they would be floated or they would go public. And this used to happen an awful lot. During the dot-com boom, people were going public just if they had a few 100,000 people visiting their website, which was, probably a little bit on the crazy side. But now it's kind of switched the opposite way, where almost no companies are going public. So one example is a company I worked at briefly called Stripe, and they are raising money in the private markets all the way up from a $100 million valuation to a $150 billion valuation. And all of that is only accessible to people who know how to navigate the private markets. This wasn't always the case. I mean, I think Microsoft went public at $500 million. I think Amazon went public not far off that and dropped to a few $100 million when people thought Amazon was going out of business after the dot-com bust. And the general trend used to be high quality technology companies would go public kind of under a 10 billion valuation. So inflation adjusted, maybe 20 billion today. That means that now they're $1, $2, and even $3 trillion that people who participate just in the public markets using their retirement accounts and Roth IRAs and various international holdings accounts and stock-based accounts, Robinhood and the like, they could all enjoy the gains of this technological marvel that's being created, whether that's mobile phones, personal computers, microchips. And it created this sense that, yes, there are these massive winners, but millions and millions of people can participate in those gains. And instead of it being locked out to regular people, it's actually available to all of us. And I just think that creates a better atmosphere and makes people feel a little bit better about technology. Like if you're getting cut out of the financial system that's growing the most, it just creates resentment. And so the thing that I would love to see is a increase in the number of British companies going public. And I think, like, whatever metrics you want to track to kind of judge whether your policies are working, I do think that the amount of companies going public on your stock market is a really, really good bellwether. Let's have a little look over here. So we got Mount Tamalpais, got cliffs, and something I've not seen before actually, just a little solar farm down here. Wondering what that charges up. And over here, got one of the ridge lines. That is absolutely beautiful. Okay, let's keep going. Huh. Nice. Yeah, so London used to really be a financial hub for a bunch of great companies to go public, but now loads of companies do not want to go public. If you look at a recent example, Deliveroo, they went public on the British Stock Exchange, got absolutely punished, smashed by the government for some of the ways in which they did business, and then eventually consumed by DoorDash. So really chilling to the public markets when it comes to listing technology companies that should be successful in Britain, but are now basically sold for parts to American success. So yeah, all of this is to say there is a really kind of chilling effect when the number of companies that go public on the London Stock Exchange keeps going down every year. And the number of high quality technology companies that are incorporated in Britain, it still remains pretty anemic. There are lots of little startups getting going, but many of the successful ones reincorporate or incorporate in Delaware so they can attract American investment and then have a London office as a subsidiary, which means that the UK government is just missing out on a ton of the benefits there. But yeah, so the overall picture in California is one of growth, and the overall picture in Britain is one of contraction. And I think that the most healthy barometer for any policy that pretends to improve what's happening in Britain would try and make sure that British technology firms are incorporating in Britain, they're getting financed by British firms and investment, and then they are employing people in Britain, they are remunerating them in stock, and then if they're acquired or they go public, all of that capital is flowing back to HMRC, and everybody feels like it's been beneficial to lift on FTSE. And the simplest metric for this would be the number of high growth technology firms that meet these criteria, where they are started, grown, and floated in Britain. So that's what would excite me. That would represent a kind of new dawn, a beautiful sunrise in this area, and it's something that I hope I can help out with a little bit. This is absolutely beautiful. All right, I'm gonna wrap that up here. Enjoy the final view. Beautiful.